Dash. Madhava Jaya Kunja Vikari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Janava Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Janava Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashanandana Jaya Mraja Janaranya Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Mraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Brihadakacharya Astottara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Brihadakacharya Astottara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaja Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Devamrita Swaminita Namane Pachai Purvaraksham Cha Bhakta Chara Pravinata Parartatapi Karunyam Yasasai Vejte Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminita Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pachayani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, the Grantaraj, Canto 5, Chapter 23, the Shishumara Planetary Systems. Yesterday we read the summary, the first few verses. Today we're starting from text 5. There's a couple of more descriptions about different things in the planets and within the universe. Oh, look at all that Sanskrit. I'll just do the first verse Sanskrit and then maybe we'll skip the rest. Now let's read all of it. Yasya puchagre vakshira saha kundali bhuta dehasya dhruva upakalpitas tasya langule prajapatir agnir indro dharma iti puchamule dhata vidata chakatyam saptarshayah tasya dakshinavarta kundali bhuta sharirasya yanyudaghayanani dakshina parshve tu nakshatrani upakalpayanti Dakshinayanani tu savye yata shishumarasya kundala bhoga saniveshasya parshvayor ubhayor apyavayavaha sama sankhya bhavanti prishte tvaja viti akasha ganga chodarataha. Let's go right to the translation. The form of the Shishumara has its head downward and its body coiled. Remember, we're hearing about the planetary systems as being resembling the Shishumara, which is like a dolphin. The form of the Shishumara has its head downward and its body coiled. On the end of its tail is the planet of Dhruva. On the body of its tail are the planets of the demigods Prajapati, Agni, Indra, and Dharma. And at the base of its tail are the planets of the demigods Dhata and Vidhata. Where the hips might be on the Shishumara are the 7 saintly sages like Vashishta and Angira. The coiled body of the Shishumara chakra turns toward its right side, on which the 14 constellations from Abhijit to Punarvasu are located. On its left side are the 14 stars from Pushya to Uttarashadha. Thus, its body is balanced because its sides are occupied by an equal number of stars. On the back of the Shishumara is the group of stars known as Ajaviti, and on its abdomen is the Ganges that flows in the sky. The Ganges that flows in the sky, the Milky Way. Continuing on to text number 6. Punarvasu Pushya Dakshina Vamayo Shranyur Andraleshe cha Dakshina Vamayo Pashchimayo Padayor Abhijid Uttarashadhe Dakshina Vamayor Nasikayor Yata Sankyam Shravana Purva Vasade Dakshina Vamayor Lochanayor Dhanishta Mulam cha Dakshina Vamayor Karnayor Maghadinyashta Nakshatrani Dakshinayanani Vama Parshva Vankrishu Yunjita Tataiva Mriga Shirsha Dinyadu Udhagayanani Dakshina Parshva Vankrishu Pratilomyena Prayunjita Shatabhisha Jeshte Skandayor Dakshina Vamayor Nyaset. On the right and left sides of where the loins might be on the Shishumara chakra are the stars named Punarvasu and Pushya. Ardra and Ashlesha are on its right and left feet. Abhijit and Uttarashadha are on its right and left nostrils. Shravana and Purvashadha are on its right and left eyes. And Dhanishta and Mula are on its right and left ears. The 8 stars from Magha to Anuradha, which mark the southern course, are on the ribs of the left of its body. And the 8 stars from Mrigashirsha to Purvabhadra, which mark the northern course, are on the ribs on the right side. Shatabhisha and Jeshta are on the right and left shoulders. Everybody got that? This would require some sort of diagram, which I'm sure some devotee has done somewhere. But at least we're getting an idea that the stars and planets are aligned in what looks like an inverted dolphin, coiled and rotating. So it's describing where some of these stars are. Okay, one more. No, a few more. Uttarahanav Agastir Adhara Hano Yamamukeshu Changaraka Shanaishchara Upaste Brihaspati Kukudi Vakshad Adityo Hridayanarayano Manasi Chandro Nabhyam Ushana Stanayor Ashvinao Buddha Pranapanayo Rahur Galeketavaha Sarvangeshu Romasu Sarvetaraganaha. On the upper chin of the Shishumara is Agasti, on its lower chin Yamaraj, on its mouth Mars, on its genitals Saturn, on the back of its neck Jupiter, on its chest the Sun, and within the core of its heart Narayana. Within its mind is the moon, on its navel Venus, and on its breast the Ashwini Kumaras. Within its life air, which is known as Pranapana, is Mercury. On its neck is Rahu, all over its body are comets, and in its pores are the numerous stars. Whew. Text number 8. Etaruhaiva Bhagavato Vishnu Sarvadevatmayam Rupam Aharaha Sandhyayam Prayato Vagyato Nirikshamana Upatishteta Namo Jyotirlokaya Kalayanayamisham Pataye Mahapurusha Bhidhimahiti. My dear king, the body of the Shishumara, as thus described, should be considered the external form of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Morning, noon, and evening, one should silently observe the form of the Lord as the Shishumara Chakra and worship him with this mantra. O Lord, who have assumed the form of time, O resting place of all the planets moving in different orbits, O master of all demigods, O supreme person, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you and meditate upon you. Of course, we do a little bit of that when we chant Brahma Gayatri. We are contemplating the Lord in the form of the sun, moving around the different illuminating the different planetary systems. So whether or not that's sufficient, it's between you and your Lord. But one can also chant this mantra 3 times a day and meditate upon a universal form of Lord Vishnu, an external form of Lord Vishnu. Continuing on to text number 9, which is the last verse of the chapter. Short chapters here. Chapter 9 says, Graharkshatara mayam adidaivikam papaham mantra kritam trikalam namasyata smarato va trikalam nashyeta tatkalajam ashupapam. The body of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, which forms the Shishumara Chakra, is the resting place of all the demigods and all the stars and planets. One who chants this mantra to worship that Supreme Person 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, will surely be freed from all sinful reactions. If one simply offers his obeisances to this form or remembers this form 3 times a day, all his recent sinful activities will be destroyed. Sounds nice. For those of us who are still performing sinful activities, well, I should hope that mostly we're over it. For the most part. We should probably be over our sinful activities by now. Purport, by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Summarizing the entire description of the planetary systems of the universe, Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur says that one who is able to meditate upon this arrangement as the Virat Rupa or Vishvarupa, the external body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worship him 3 times a day by meditation, will always be free from all sinful reactions. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur estimates that Dhruvaloka, the pole star, is 3,800,000 yojanas above the sun. Above Dhruvaloka by 10 million yojanas is Maharloka. Above Maharloka by 20 million yojanas is Janaloka. Above Janaloka by 80 million yojanas is Tapaloka. and above Tapaloka by 120 million yojanas is Satyaloka. Thus, the distance from the sun to Satyaloka is 233,800,000 yojanas, or 1,870,400,000 miles. The Vaikuntha planets begin 26,200,000 yojanas, or 209,600,000 miles above Satyaloka. Thus, the Vishnu Purana describes that the covering of the universe is 260,000. I swear, I can't read numbers. That part of my brain hasn't woken up yet. 260 million yojanas, 2,080,000,000 miles away from the sun. The distance from the sun to the earth is 100,000 yojanas, and below the earth by 70,000 yojanas are the 7 lower planetary systems called Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Pahatala. Below these lower planets by 30,000 yojanas, Sheshanaga is lying on the Garbhodaka ocean. That ocean is 249,800,000 yojanas deep. Thus, the total diameter of the universe is approximately 500 million yojanas, or 4 billion miles. Krishna. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th canto, 23rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled the Shishumara Planetary Systems. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamaham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Hare Krishna. So, if we wrapped up the description of the Shishumara planetary systems, again, a bit bewildering, a little confusing, but at least from these numbers described in this purport, we can see that we are in the lower part of the universe. We are much closer to the lower planetary systems, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, and the rest, than we are to the upper planetary systems, like Satyaloka. Because the distance from the sun to Satyaloka is 233,800,000 yojanas. And yet, these lower planetary systems are a mere 70,000 yojanas below the Earth. So it gives some indication of where we're at in our lives. So we're down here. Technically, we're in the middle planetary systems, but much more closer to the bottom and to the top. So, what's interesting in this purport, I think, although it is a technicality, Srila Prabhupada uses the word estimates. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur estimates that Dhruvaloka, the pole star, is 3,800,000 yojanas above the sun. Again, as described by Dasya Prema Prabhu, Prabhupada did not speak so absolutely about some of these cosmic things, but sometimes said this thing or sometimes said that thing, giving some indication that could be like this, could be like that. At the end of the day, doesn't change much about our relationship with our Lord. Whether or not we can understand it does not change some of the crucial things in life, particularly death, which is coming for all of us. And but what we should learn, of course, and as we've heard so many times in reading these chapters, is that we should appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead for keeping it all together, for holding everything together. And that has been the trend throughout all of humanity forever, recognizing that this universe is functional and habitable by the arrangement of the Lord, and therefore have some appreciation. So therefore, these verses are saying, offer this prayer, chant this mantra, and worship the Supreme Person by saying, O Lord, who have assumed the form of time, O resting place of all the planets moving in different orbits, O master of all demigods, O Supreme Person, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you and meditate upon you. It's a simple prayer, a simple mantra expressing some gratitude that there is such a thing as time, that there is solid earth under your feet, air in your lungs. We take these basics for granted, but we should not. And so to have this simple devotion and appreciation as described in this verse would actually be a great lesson for a lot of us. The exact position of every planet and star might be over our heads, but to have some simple appreciation for the Lord would be a good lesson for many of us. So that is, of course, what we are to learn here. It's all right if we struggle with some things in the Shastra. It's okay. We don't want to have, this is some opinion, but it is also substantiated by His divine grace. We don't want to have fanatics who, even though failing to understand the import of the Shastra, just use it, weaponize it against others and actually condemn themselves and others. We don't want to have those sort of religious fanatics. There's enough of them in the world already. We don't need to add to that lot, which means that it is okay and it is normal even to struggle with some things that are in the scripture. It's also normal to inquire from someone. Perhaps it's not normal to inquire from somebody who knows the answer. Actually, that is really extraordinary if we have that opportunity. And we all have that opportunity. So for us, it is normal to struggle with something that's in the Shastra, but it's also normal to inquire from somebody who knows and to ask, how can I understand this? How can I appreciate what's going on here? How can I apply this in my life? To struggle with some of the concepts, themes, and statements in the scripture or of our acharyas is actually healthy. It's healthy to be a little challenged by the statements. And as we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and hopefully we are all reading Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, we shouldn't just let your eyes pass over the page and just kind of like, well, I guess I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But if we find something challenging, it should be like a speed bump for our contemplation, and we should stop, slow down, and consider, if I don't immediately understand this, what does it mean? Is there some fault in my capacity to understand? Am I struggling with some attachments? Is there a fault in the way that it's been described? Or do I need to hear some further elucidation from somebody who has more experience? And that's okay. That's really healthy, actually, to feel a little challenged. And for those of my God family in the room, I'm quoting Gurudev. His Holiness Devamrita Swami said, we should feel challenged when reading the Shastra, when you're reading for certain things, and it's like, hold on, do I really get this? He said, do I believe this? Do I understand this? That's a healthy way to approach any scripture. It's not, believe it or not, it's not as healthy to just be some blind, maniacal, pedantic, literalist. Because historically we've seen that those sort of people eventually end up killing somebody who doesn't do exactly what it says in their scripture. Our Srila Prabhupada, very fortunately, helped us to understand the essence. He presented Bhagavad Gita as it is, so that it's clear for us to see the essence of devotion. And to not become crazy over the details. Srila Rupa Goswami as well made this clear in the Nectar of Devotion, as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He said that there are essential principles which we all must follow, like worshiping the Lord with devotion, having a spiritual master. And then he said there are details. And the details aren't as important, basically. So sometimes we struggle with some details. Devotees have disagreements about how to apply details. Disagreements about what the detailed points of the Shastra mean. The detailed points of what the Acharya has said means. But there is no disagreement about the essential principles, and that's a very good sign. It means we're doing pretty well for Kali Yuga. So, it's all right. My point is, it's all right to feel a little challenged by some statements of the Shastra. It's also all right and extraordinary to inquire from somebody who knows more. But what we should understand also is that realization, vijnana, of the conclusions of the Shastra is not an exercise of our brain organ. It is a dynamic relationship with the Lord and with the spiritual master. Without such relationship, even a simple statement like 1 + 1 = 2 would be very difficult for us. Even very simple things can be difficult without a dynamic relationship, without the blessings, without the grace of the Lord and the devotees, particularly the spiritual master. Even simple concepts are hard to understand. If one, and we see this all the time in preaching Krishna consciousness, how many times do we tell people, you're not the body? How many times do we tell ourselves? Sometimes we still struggle with it. But especially I see, and there are some people I've told at least 1,000 times, right? Jagannath Pandit Prabhu can testify. He comes up to the programs on Thursdays so often. And pretty much every time I'm on the mic, it's always, you're not the body, most of the time. And still a lot of people, they just like, what? It's hard to get. Without the mercy of the Lord, it's hard to have realization of anything, really. Yata smritir jnanam apohanam cha, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, from me comes knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. To understand something, to comprehend it, is actually a dynamic relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and with the spiritual master. It's not just an exercise of our brain capacity or our calculator or our drafting ability. We can try to draw the Shishimar, our planetary system, and make the measurements and draft everything. Get out your protractor and your ruler and stuff and try to make a diagram. Realization and comprehension of something is a dynamic relationship with the Lord and with the spiritual master. That is what we should pursue, and then perhaps we can start to understand what's going on with this planetary system description. Hence it is said in the Padma Purana, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tathai Guru Tasyaiti Katita Hyartha Prakashante Mahatmana. That to understand the conclusions of the Shastra, to understand the descriptions, this dynamic relationship with the Lord happens by His grace. One has faith in the Lord and in the spiritual master, then some realization, prakasha, some enlightenment happens by their grace. Oh, thanks Tarika Prabhu for putting it in the chat, because I'm not sure I said all the words correctly. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tata Gurao. It's interesting that Gurao is in the plural, because we have many teachers. Tasyaita Katita Hyarta Prakashante Mahanmana. So It's the very fourth person, a Mahatmana, who receives that blessing, that grace, that inspiration. Prakasha can also be described as inspiration, so that they can realize what's going on, what's being described here in this Shastra, or realize anything of this world. I was just discussing last night in our Bhagavad Gita group that we have at the Bhakti Yoga Center. There's a one brilliant man who comes. He was here for Bhavan. He's got, I don't know how many degrees he has, 3 masters and just got his first of 2 doctorates. Quite genius. And, Sanskrit scholar, knows everything. And so I feel really intimidated when it comes to the Bhagavad Gita discussion. But he was describing a famous Indian mathematician named Ramanujan, who made a lot of headway in some important mathematical calculations and things and formulas. And there was a biography done about him. Some of you might have heard of it. It's called The Man Who Knew Infinity. And anyway, what he explicitly says in his biography is that he never discovered anything. All these formulas, the math is totally over my head, but I guess it's important to some people how these formulas work. And his confession is that he never discovered anything. He prayed to a particular deity. I can't remember the name of the deity, although Bhavan told me just last night. And he said that when he would pray, sometimes at night in a dream, he would hear from his Ishtadeva some portion of these formulas that he would discover, and he would write it down, and then he would get another part. And he would say that all of these mathematical formulas that he's now famous for, they're all inspired by the Lord. So much to the frustration of his mathematical colleagues, this is his confession. So to understand anything of this world, and to understand the conclusions of the Shastra, it's not just an exercise of our brain organ. Some people don't even have a brain, literally. It's a condition called hydroencephaly, where the gray matter of the brain is replaced by just sort of spinal fluid. We've mentioned before so many times, everyone's now familiar with the famous case of the young man from Oxford University, who, also a mathematician, was studying. He had a series of headaches and saw a doctor that did an x-ray and found that he had like 2% of the usual gray matter of normal people. That had an extreme case of hydroencephaly, water on the brain. And yet he was a fully functional Oxford mathematician. So it's not a function of the brain organ. It's not just, do I have the intelligence to understand what's described here? By the grace of the Lord, we might get some insight into not just understanding how this universe is situated, how its laws function, but most importantly, to understand that it functions under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna says explicitly in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 10, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sachara charam hetuna nenakunteya jagad viparivartita. I can't remember the last line. That anyway, by his supervision, akshena, this material world is working, controlling all the moving and non-moving beings. The wise who perfectly know this engage in his devotional service. So this is something we start to see by the grace of the Lord, not just with our own intelligence. So my point is that it's okay to have some doubts. It's okay to feel challenged by the statements made by Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, by our acharyas. It's okay. And it's also extraordinary to inquire from someone who knows and who can give us insight. That's the part which is really remarkable. We see this all the time when preaching Krishna consciousness, and it is always extraordinary. It just happened this week on Thursday, actually. We have another young woman who's coming to the programs, Tatum, who went with Anandini on the India trip. She's come back inspired, but being a typical young American girl, she was especially challenged by statement of Srila Prabhupada in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein he says that, quoting Chanakya Pandit, women are generally less intelligent and therefore not considered trustworthy. So, as we were enjoying our spaghetti and kofta balls and our, and our apple crumble, she just like threw this on me. I've been reading through the Bhagavad Gita again, but I can't accept that Srila Prabhupada would say this thing. So this is very normal, actually. We don't have to freak out too much. You know, as a young girl, probably 21 years, I don't know how old she is, but a young white girl, you know, in a college town in America. And obviously some of these statements are abrasive and shocking. So we had some nice discussion about it. It's just remarkable that someone would even have the wisdom to inquire instead of just anything that I disagree with, chuck it out. Because that's very much the trend for a lot of people these days. And that's obviously not very intelligent. Anything that I disagree with, anything that I don't understand, just useless. So when someone actually inquires, tries to understand, it's remarkable. It is a dynamic exchange between that soul, that jiva, the Lord, and the devotee, particularly the guru, the teacher. And that dynamic relationship can bring about prakasha, enlightenment. So we tried our best to share some insight. And remarkably, despite this person, this soul, having a young white woman's body, remarkably, by the end of this discussion with myself and with Parameshri Devi Dasi and Anandini Lalita Devi Dasi, by the end of it, she was like, you know, it's possible that there's some truth here. Yeah, I can see that it is possible that there's something to learn here. So that's remarkable. That in just a few moments, going from feeling appalled to being in a position where you can actually learn something. And there are hard lessons to learn, especially if you read the books of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. He doesn't skimp on the hard lessons. He doesn't brush over them. He makes sure that we're confronted by difficult lessons. By the grace of the Lord and the devotees, deep realization can happen. How do we know that it's possible? Especially if we're trying to preach Krishna consciousness to others, and sometimes we feel a little intimidated. Why did Prabhupada say that? Oh my God. Why is he always saying you're not the body? How can we have confidence that people can really learn this? They can really understand it? Well, we can have that confidence. It should be obvious because we did it. We're all here. Again, by the grace of the Lord and the devotees, realization comes. It's not just, does someone have the intelligence, like the IQ? It's not just, if they have a particular body, they're going to be able to get it. That's been very much the trend in ISKCON. Well, don't waste time with all the American girls. It's too difficult. Let's just preach to the Indians. It's a lot easier. No, it's not really a result of the body. It's a dynamic relationship between the Lord, the living entity, and the teacher, the guru, that allows for that realization to take place. So someone did it for us. Therefore, we should have faith that we can also share Krishna consciousness and other people can understand. Dear devotees, when I first read Bhagavad Gita, given to me by some Prabhus in New Zealand, when I met the devotees there, I didn't understand a damn thing. I just went cover to cover, I closed it, and I was like, what? Missed it. Right over my head. Totally missed all of it. And I told, but fortunately, maybe it's just my arrogance, or maybe I just wanted to flirt with these girls at this preaching center in New Zealand. But I told some of them, yeah, I read your book. I read your Bhagavad Gita, but not for me. I didn't really get anything from it. And this one girl who was preaching to me, Gopi Gita, she said, let's read it together right now. Literally just grabbed my arm, sat me down at that very spot. We're in the stairwell going up to where this place was. Let's read some right now. She opened it up, just started reading. page 1, on page 2, page 3 for a long time, just reading it together. And suddenly, it's like, oh wow, there's some deep stuff here. This is amazing. First time, completely missed it. Second time, because of the grace of the devotee. This is mystical stuff, dear Prabhus. I'm sharing, I'm not usually like in the mystical sort of person. I try to get down to the brass tacks, but I'm telling you, I had this mystical experience whereby, because this devotee wanted to be merciful to me, she cared enough to just do it right then and there, that suddenly the realization came. Yasya devi parabhaktir yata devi tata guru tasyaiti takatita hyarta prakasante mahatmana. It's by the grace of the Lord and the devotees that suddenly some enlightenment is possible. So, I'm very indebted, of course, to her for making that possible for me as well. And therefore, we should know that anyone can understand. Maybe even will be able to understand this description of the planetary systems, but the other things that are somewhat more relevant to us, like getting over the bodily concept of life, becoming detached from material existence, the false ego, and falling in love with Krishna. Even though we might struggle with some of the things that are presented in our Shastra, that is okay. If by the grace of the Lord and the devotees we get their mercy, we can get some realization and go beyond the capacity of our brain organ and realize things even beyond the senses. That is the dynamic, mystical knowledge of the Shastra. That's what we're approaching here, not just an exercise of our brain and our intelligence quotient, but by the grace of the Lord, can we realize some of the statements that are here and realize that we are parts and parcels of the Lord, meant to serve Him with love and devotion. So if, as we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and other scriptures presented by our acharyas, if we may struggle with the statements, if we are confused, bewildered, even challenged, that is okay. It's very healthy, actually. The extraordinary thing is to inquire further from those who know, to pray to the Lord for understanding, so that we can appreciate and serve Him with love and devotion. That is the magic of the Shastra. Let's not miss out on the magic by treating it as just some treatise of information. No, this is Krishna Himself in Srimad Bhagavatam. The dynamic relationship will facilitate realization. Krishna svadama pagote dharma gena dibisaha kalo nashtradisham esha puranarka dunorita. Said by Sutta Goswami that in this Kali Yuga, Krishna has returned to his own abode, and he took dharma, knowledge, he took all these things with him. But he's present in this form, this sun-like form of this Purana. Purana Arka, it's the sun-like Purana, where he can be seen and heard in this form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're not just downloading some information. Even though there's a lot of description of numbers here, it's not just about the information, as is described in the previous verse. The purpose is to appreciate the Lord. That happens by the grace of the Lord. That realization that the Lord is the form of time, the resting place of the planets and the orbits, the master of the demigods. That happens by the grace of the Lord, not just by squeezing our brain organ. So, to make the magic happen, read Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in the association of the devotees. Inquire from the spiritual master, inquire from the devotees who know, and pray to the Lord to have some understanding. Pray to Srimad Bhagavatam. If we get profound, a deep realization, then we can share it with others. And life is wonderful. It's marvelous. Hare Krishna. That's my statements for today. Thank you, dear devotees, for listening. If you have any comments, additions or subtractions, or even questions if you're feeling feisty. Oh, Tarika Prabhu has raised his digital hand. Dear Tarika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
two things. I have a comment and a question. I want to thank you for a wonderful class, and I especially appreciate that you took the time to quote Svetasvatra Upanishad, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir. Had you not quoted
Oh,
that, I would
Shvetashvara
have,
Upanishad. I'm sorry, I said Padma Purana. Thank you for
yeah,
correcting me.
I would have quoted that myself in a comment, but you went ahead and quoted it, so I'm delighted to hear you do that. In that verse, and you also referenced the um, specific words. Hold on a second while I find the, here we are. Uh, Prakashante, which is translated to mean are revealed. And I, as you pointed out, that's a significant um, word in this particular quote that in other contexts, Prakash has other meanings, but similar, related. Um, so, for example, when we speak of the radiance, the effulgence of the sun, it is sometimes referred to as Surya Prakash. You have something which is radiating from a particular source, and that's um, that's part of what is being expressed by this particular shloka, that um, the understanding is not simply realized. That I tell people all the time that the process of Krishna consciousness is not an academic process. It's a process of realization, but that realization, it comes through revelation. The revelation is coming from Guru and Krishna. It doesn't just pop into your head. It has a source, just like the sunshine has a source. So Prakash Shante, it is revealed, not that it just, you just understand by dint of your own power of comprehension, but it is revealed to you by someone. So Guru, or Krishna himself, or other great souls, as the verse says, Mahatmanaha. Um, so I think that's important. Um, I have a question. My question
If I
was,
may just, Prabhu, that's why
oh,
I kind of
sure.
translate the term prakasha as enlightenment in the context of this verse. Because prakasha can refer to illumination, surya
Yeah,
prakasha,
well,
and that sort of jnana
so
deepa, enlightenment of knowledge.
yeah, enlightenment. Um, for me, the connotation of enlightenment is that it needn't necessarily imply revelation. Um, a Buddhist might, for example, conceive of the idea of enlightenment as being something that he arrives at on his own, by dint of his own efforts. But how this verse is specifically translated by Srila Prabhupada is that it's a process of revelation. And so Prakashanti is translated as are revealed.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Okay. Yes, I
my
understand you.
question is, because you really piqued my curiosity. I'm curious to know how specifically you were able to get through to the young lady in State College. What was the tack that you took to bring her around, or at least to open her mind to the possibility that Srila Prabhupada was correct in his assertion?
The tactic. It's a good way to put it because by the grace of the Lord and Guru, I've been preaching to a lot of Western people, and In Australia, it's even harder. The feminism in Australia is just like off the charts. So all the time, the young girls will come up and say, why does Prabhupada say this? So my tactic is to say, that's a good question for my wife, first and foremost. Because, if someone is identifying with the body, especially in a female body, they might be opposed to some what's called mansplaining, where a man has to explain to a woman how to see something. So then, better just to defer to some lady who can share her realization of the points. But if they are willing to hear from me, then I say that Srila Prabhupada's statement about women obviously refers to those who, in the bodily concept of life, identify with the body, and in the female body, we see that sometimes, more often, a woman can be a bit more overwhelmed by emotional things and more easily taken advantage of. And especially in the context of that first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the context was Arjuna's concern that all these men being killed will leave a bunch of widows, and those women will be taken advantage of. Not seeing, unable to see how a man is very duplicitous. So Prabhupada also criticizes men at the very end of that purport, but owing to the context of feminism in the day, a statement about women kind of stands out more. So I explained to her in this way, and she seemed to be accepting of the statement. But I think the best tactic, especially now in 2024, is to, if there's a young woman who's new to bhakti and is confronted by these statements, to allow some other woman to give some explanation and not try to mansplain too much. I also said that, and this is just a speculation, that if Srila Prabhupada were here in 2024, I imagine that he would word things a little differently, recognizing the sensitivity of the issue, but still make the same point. Everyone's body is faulty. In the context of this sort of post-feminist movement, we feel like we're not allowed to criticize women. It's more appalling to make some critique, but the truth is there. Everyone's body has problems. Everyone's body is subject to so many faults. And so I explained to this young woman that Srila Prabhupada is not wrong. You might feel confronted by this, but I hope that you'll see that there's a lot of truth in this statement, and no one's body is free from critique. So that was some of my tactics, and then I just left it to the ladies. Parmeshri and my wife, Nandini Lalita, did well too. I guess she was all right because she came to the Bhagavad Gita discussion last night. So anyway, there's 1,000 different ways you can handle those sort of issues, but at the end of the day, it'll be her relationship with the Lord. If she can get some realization and go beyond the bodily concept of life and not allow these sort of challenging statements to compromise or sabotage her pursuit of bhakti. That'll be between her and the Lord. We can only try our best to give our own realization as far as we know it and give inspiration. But it's also on her. Hare Krishna. I don't want to speak too much because we want to leave some time for Mukunda Prabhu. So nice of you to join us, Mukunda Prabhu. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Dandavats Prabhu. Nice class. There is a little bit of echo. I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing everything Taka was saying, but I was able to catch most of it. But two things. One was the mystical power that we talk about, the transmission of revelation from Guru. So Rupa Goswami Pad has described this is actually Swarup Shakti. So it is that Swarup Shakti, which is the internal spiritual energy, which is being revealed in increments starting from faith up to the point of full revelation in Bhav, which is described Sudha Sattva Viseshatma, Prem Suryanksa Samyabhak, Ruchi Bish Chittamasranya, Krita Sobhava. So that same revelatory power, which is Swarup Shakti, that appears in Bhav, appears as an influence in Shraddha that causes us to have faith in trying to obtain Krishna. Then in Sadhu Sangha, it becomes realization that that Swarup Shakti is present in Guru. And then Guru gives instructions and the ability to follow the instructions, which is called bhajan, the word kriya is added there. That word kriya means the kriya shakti of Swarup Shakti, the functional element of Swarup Shakti. That's what removes anarthas, because we don't have the power to remove anarthas. And then we come to Nishta, Ruchi, etc. But that's the power, that's the mystical revelatory agent. About the situation with women being less intelligent.
Thank you, Prabhu, for that very in-depth explanation. I hope that someday I can understand the technicality. We appreciate your very technical, explicit descriptions. Thank you, Prabhu.
These things are written by our acharyas.
Yeah, it's just
But
over my head most of the time.
on a practical level, as far as understanding women are less intelligent, Srila Prabhupada wrote, it was completely contextual what Chanaka Pandit quoted, because he could not have been a Pandit and not known about women like Mandodari, the wife of Ravan, Anasuya, Kunti. So the term less intelligent here would be the same as our social parlance if we were to say someone is educated or not. In other words, we consider education in our society to be related to university education in general. We just say, are you educated? Oh, yeah, it means you've gone to university and so forth and so on. That's like a kind of common parlance for what we call education. But it certainly doesn't indicate that the mass amount of people, whether they've gone to university or not, are not educated or intelligent. So Chanaka related intelligence to study of the Vedas, and obviously women at that time did not study Veda. But we certainly could not say that Mandadari, Kunti, Anasuya, Savitri, all these women were less intelligent, because then he could not be a Pandit if he didn't realize that. So it's a contextual thing.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. That's also what I expressed to this young woman, that it's in a particular context, and please take the time to read all of Srila Prabhupada's statements, and you'll see that he's not some, misogynist, but he's also, gives due criticism of men and women and everybody else, as is the Guru's thankless task. So yes, I also tried to explain that it's very contextual. I think, and this is just my speculation, but Srila Prabhupada is obviously a genius and empowered by the Lord, and that if he were here in 2024, seeing the sensitivities of the day, maybe he would express that same point using in a different way, so that people can understand and not be too taken aback. But who knows? Anyway, somehow this girl has been inspired to continue hearing, and that is both the mercy of the Lord and the devotees and Srila Prabhupada. That's the magic that we get to see when we share Krishna consciousness with others. It's always magical. It's always remarkable. So thank you, Mukunda Prabhu, for giving us some further elucidation and some inspiration. Unless anybody else has something urgent to say, we will have to wrap up. Saturday is a busy day for me. Yes, Tarka Prabhu?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. Just that with regards to controversial statements from Srila Prabhupada, what I heard him express on several occasions was that he liked making controversial statements. He was fully aware of how people would respond. And he made reference many times, for example, to the interview that he did in an airport with a female reporter, in which he spoke about women being less intelligent. And that reporter didn't take it particularly well. There were other examples that Srila Prabhupada gave, which evade me at the moment. But Srila Prabhupada would intentionally make controversial statements in order to get people's attention, to wake them up and to cause them to take notice of what he was saying. He deemed it valuable for them to, even if they had a negative opinion, that they were giving any attention to his message at all, he considered to be a positive.
Yes.
And
this is an important
so
technique. Sorry, Prabhu. Sorry, did I cut you off, Tarka Prabhu? You still there? I don't know if we lost him or if we lost me, but this is an important technique, actually. And Krishna does the same in Bhagavad Gita when he tells Arjuna, Klaibyam, you're impotent. It helps to shake a person up a little bit so that they'll think deeply about what's going on. Taraka Prabhu? I don't know if we lost him, what happened? I guess we'll have to finish here anyway. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. If anybody wants to give class tomorrow, let me know. Otherwise, we don't have a class on Sundays. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nittai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.
Haribo.